As we enter into the ending of 1862, the second year of the Civil War, the Union now had a cause, a new cause, and this war was now a war about slavery and trying to end slavery in America. And you also had increased recruiting for the Union. And so you had a lot of people that were pretty jacked up and excited to be able to fight for this cause. Now, you did have some Union soldiers that wanted out, and so they were given honorable discharges to leave because they did not believe in fighting a war against slavery, but more men served and signed up in comparison to the men that decided to leave the force. But altogether, they started having a gigantic force, and some of the different armies that you're going to see. This one here in Fredericksburg is going to be 122,000 Union men. Now, you did see in the Peninsula Campaign 125,000 men, but usually in most battles, you're not going to see upwards of 100,000. And here in these next two, you're going to see that exactly for the Union. So the Union has a huge army, and they expect to be able to go down to Virginia, slam through the Confederate force, go take the capital, Richmond, Virginia, and then have the war come to a swift end. Now, altogether, my title here is Proper Planning versus Blind Confidence, the Battle of Fredericksburg. This is Fredericksburg, Virginia, about smack dab in the center of the state of Virginia is our next battle. Now, the way we're going to look at this, we're once again going to look at this from a leadership perspective. The objective is to determine what traits propel a person to be an effective leader and which ones cause others to be unsuccessful. We're specifically going to look for that last part of what caused the Union leader here to be unsuccessful. Leadership requires clear communication, trust, effective planning, and accountability. To be a good leader, you at least have to have a good assemblage of these traits to be someone that is well respected and well followed. These traits would be lacking in the new Union commander. After the Battle of Antietam, after George McClellan would not go after Robert E. Lee, would not chase him, despite the fact that the Potomac was rising, despite the fact that Lee didn't have that many crossings on the Potomac to get back to Virginia, McClellan was not going to chase after Robert E. Lee. And so Lincoln realized, I must say goodbye to him. Despite the fact that the soldiers respect him, he can't be my general any longer. He can't be my commander. So he's going to dismiss him from the force entirely. And McClellan will come back in a way, but we'll look at that later on down the road. But for now, Abraham Lincoln's going to have to find a new commander, and he's going to turn to one of the corps commanders that has been loyal, that has done a fairly decent job fighting in the war so far, and that is Ambrose Burnside. One ridiculous thing about him, one way to remember the guy is the stupid sideburns he's got there. No offense to anybody that loves facial hair whatsoever, but for him, sideburns actually got their name because of these ridiculous pork chops that he had on the side of his face. But sideburns gets his name because of Burnside. Lincoln just wants somebody that's going to be a fighter, and he thinks Burnside's going to be that guy. And Burnside has a plan. He's going to go straight down through Virginia, and he's going to try to smash the Confederate force. And he's going to take a huge force of 122,000 men with him. The Confederates, even if they muster up every single bit of army they have, are only going to have about 75,000 men. So the Union is going to have a huge advantage in this battle. Now, to get to the Confederates, Ambrose Burnside realizes that he needs to build some bridges, some makeshift bridges, to get his huge army across the Rappahannock River. And so he orders pontoon boats to be sent along with bridge-making materials down to the area of Fredericksburg, Virginia. So they're going to get engineers to tie together different boards and put them on top of pontoon boats and make a nice makeshift bridge. He's actually going to build 3 of these. Only problem is he stupidly didn't put a rush order on this. And when the Union was sending these pontoon boats, they took their sweet time, and they also sent them down to the wrong location. And altogether, they show up 2 weeks late. That gives Stonewall Jackson perfect time to come from the western side of Virginia over to the eastern side of Virginia and get there for Robert E. Lee to make sure that the entire Confederate force was here waiting for the Union right across the Rappahannock River, right in the high ground up in the Fredericksburg Hills. Now, we're going to get into round 5 of our battles game here. And so let me give the situation. It is late fall of 1862, and the Union finally makes another change at commander. Abraham Lincoln finally relieves George McClellan of duty and promotes Ambrose Burnside to command of all the Union forces. Ambrose Burnside feels the pressure to take action right away and immediately begins moving men and material down towards Richmond, Virginia. He has a plan to cross the Rappahannock River by way of pontoon boat bridges and attack the Confederates wherever they are found. One of his corps commanders, Winfield Scott Hancock, comes to him with an idea. Since the pontoon boat bridges are not here yet, is it possible for his corps to ford the river and take the high ground at Fredericksburg before Lee does? Ambrose Burnside could even ford the river with his entire 122,000 man army and occupy that high ground before Lee is a solid force there. The only problem is that President Lincoln approved of Burnside's plan already to cross using those pontoon boat bridges. So he'd have to violate his pledge to the president. So, what do? Option A. Do you wait for those pontoon boat bridges to arrive? You don't know if they're anywhere close, but do you wait and stick with the plan that Lincoln already approved? Option B. You allow Winfield Scott Hancock to take just his corps, his 10,000 men, to cross over the Rappahannock and try to take the high ground before Lee can get that high ground. But just 10,000 men across, not your entire army. Option C. Do you forget the pontoon boat bridges entirely and your approved plan with Lincoln and just send your entire force, your entire 122,000 men, to a low point in the creek so you can ford the river, or not the creek, but the river, and go take that high ground before Stonewall Jackson can get here? Do you take your whole army across that river upon low water areas to get over to the Confederate side? So those are your choices. What do you pick? So, A, B, or C, pick one. Here we go. If you selected A, that's exactly what Ambrose Burnside did. Stupid idea. You let Jackson show up. You let Lee take the high ground. And now you're going to face their entire army. You're going to earn 0 points here. For B, if you chose B, if you allowed Winfield Scott Hancock to take his 10,000 men across, that's not bad. They're able to take the Stonewall. They're able to take Mars Heights. They're able to take the Fredericksburg Heights, and you earn 1 point. You still have some fighting to do, but still, you've got a bit of an advantage now. If you chose C to send your entire 122,000 man army across the river to ford the river by foot and to get across before Jackson can show up, that's your best idea. You just took the high ground. You caused Lee to be on the run because his army is not concentrated. They're not together. And you earn 2 points. He is running the entire way back to Richmond, Virginia right now, and you're going to be able to go chase him and go take their capital perhaps and win this war. Now, as Ambrose Burnside tries to convince his officers that they cannot be beaten, Robert E. Lee confidently waits on the high ground. He communicates with his officers. They know exactly what area they're supposed to defend, and they know what attack's probably going to head their way. So they are very well prepared. As the pontoon boat bridges are being built, there are Mississippi snipers that are picking off the engineers like crazy, so it's just tough for the Union even to get to the Confederates, just to get across the river. And then secondly, you have this area right here, this area called Mary's Heights, that is to the western side, or sorry, to the south side of Fredericksburg. And in front of the Confederates, they also have a nice stone wall, and they dug a little ditch behind there to have some greater cover. And so altogether, the Confederates have some high ground behind them, and they also have some good defenses. They don't even need trenches. They already got a ready-made trench there in that wall. The Union's going to try a two-prong attack. First, they're going to try to attack to the east, and that is against Stonewall Jackson. Now, talking about Ambrose Burnside. Ambrose Burnside needed to be much more clear with his attack plans, especially with York County General William B. Franklin. William B. Franklin held 10,000 men back. Burnside thought he told him he was supposed to use all his men. Franklin was very confused on the orders, and so he decided to hold some of the men back in reserve. He could have pushed forward. He could have taken Jackson's force. He could have totally broken through the right flank of the Confederate force, but he decided not to send all his men in, and Jackson held. And so the second attack came in the area of that stone wall, this stone wall area called Mary's Heights or the Fredericksburg Heights, the high ground of this battlefield. The second part happened here with Bull Sumner and Joseph Hooker attacking the stone wall. Now, Burnside thought his huge 122,000 man army could overcome anything, so he sent them directly at the Confederates. He sent 14 assaults. But for the Confederates and Robert E. Lee, he had a great artillery commander by the name of E. Porter Alexander that said, a chicken couldn't live on that land when we open up on it. So when they start, they're going to see, these are the Confederate cannon up here. They're going to see the Union line attack one after another, after another, after another. And here's the Confederate infantry, the foot soldiers. The Confederates are just going to be able to shoot right over top and blast these Union forces as they're trying to approach that stone wall. The Union has no chance whatsoever, but yet Ambrose Burnside sends attack after attack after attack, and it is absolutely just a suicide mission. Here's a clip here from Gods and Generals I wanted you to take a look at later. And then a picture here. You see the Confederates behind this stone wall. The Confederates are just down in that gully, just able to reload. Yeah, you got a couple men that are wounded or a couple men not fighting, but altogether, as soon as their gun is ready to fire, they're going to line right up at the stone wall. And altogether, what you have is the Confederates only lose maybe 2,000 men in this part of the battle. The Union loses about 6,000 to 7,000. It is embarrassing for the Union. They had no chance whatsoever in this fight at this area. Once again, another picture here. There's that gully they dug out, and then the stone wall in front of them. But the Confederates, it was easy to defend, especially because the cannon behind them up here on this hill could just give them artillery cover the whole time, and hardly any of the Union even got close to that wall. For Ambrose Burnside, why would you not try to flank around them? Why would you not try to move around that hill and around that stone wall? Why would you send 12,000 men straight into a bloodbath? You really think that they can just defeat anybody? Like, they got marauded here, especially by the Confederate cannon. And then, worse yet, at nighttime, he goes back to his headquarters, and all of his aides are there, all of his corps commanders are there, and he just chides them up and down, just totally berating them like crazy, and said, if I just had my corps, I could have taken that. I could have taken the hill. He still thinks that somehow that 5,000 men, 10,000 men could have taken that easy. No way, man. Not a chance. It seems like he didn't have his eyes open that day. And all of his aides, all of his corps commanders all of a sudden lost complete and total faith in him. And it comes back to this: a good leader must have clear communication, trust of the people they're working with. They must have effective planning. They must have good ideas that are going to not put people on suicide missions. And they must be accountable. You must have broad shoulders, and you must accept blame where blame is due. He deserved blame here, but he was not accepting of any of it. And so, altogether, he proved in so many ways in one single battle that he was an absolutely terrible leader. And worse yet, he goes to Abraham Lincoln a couple weeks after this and says, I want this officer fired, and this officer fired, and this officer fired. And Lincoln actually says to him, there will be people fired. One of them will be you. And so Lincoln has a little bit of a piece of reality there for Ambrose Burnside, as he is now going to be dismissed as commander. Now, to Burnside's credit, he will continue to be a good soldier. He will continue to serve the Union Army, and so he'll go back to being a corps commander, but not the overall top dog commander anymore. But I'll say I respect the fact that he still fought well and served the Union, even after he was so embarrassed here and lost his position. The Union loses over 12,000 men in this battle. Confederates only lose 5,000. It is a huge Confederate victory and a terrible, terrible moment for the Union Army. And the Union's going to have to find a new commander. And so they're going to turn to this guy that you see right here. Joseph Hooker is going to be their new commander. He's going to take over in the spring of 1863, and it's going to bring us up to our next battle, which is the Battle of Chancellorsville. No assessment today. We'll pick up on some of the questions on the quizzes tomorrow. All right. Thank you very much.